Chess Assassin presents Game Strategy and Approach 1800 rated and above. Chess assassins are not born, they are made. Reading the pawn skeleton and following the pawn structure roadmap. Throughout the course of this game, I will describe the plans for both sides that pertain to the pawn structure. Greetings to all visitors and welcome fellow chess assassins. And the particular piece placement that was reached. Early on, you have the classic queenside central pawns. Which brings up the question, well, how would you define this game? Whether it's open, semi-open, or closed? Well, from the moves that were made, a lot of pawns get exchanged in the center and the game becomes more semi-open overall. So the game starts off with d4, d5, c4. White plays c4 and later c5. But what is the idea? Well, black on the other hand has e6, the pawn on e6, and later plays the pawn from e6 to e5. So after knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, followed by h6, and now pawn to g3. White's strategy in this game plan, by playing g3 and bishop g2, a kingside fianchetto, plans to exert pressure and controlling the long diagonal towards b7. c5, which white will later play, gains space on the queen side, trying to create a pawn lever that restricts black's minor pieces and potentially fixes weaknesses on the dark squares. And now continuing, bishop e7. Black's strategy in this game has an early h6 and bishop on e7. Bishop g2, short castle. This is solid development for black, who makes waiting moves and discourages knight jumps. For instance, pawn on h6 stops the knight from moving to g5. Knight c6, and now knight captures on c6, being the first capture. And later, after black recaptures with the pawn, black often aims for central control and active piece placement, and is willing to restructure pawns for piece activity. B recaptures on c6. Now there's a lot of central action and trades as the game goes on. And there it is, pawn to c5. Now c5 is good space, but once you trade central pawns, black often gets rook play at either 1800 level. If you're rated 1800 or above, the key is this. When you open lines, make sure your pieces, especially your king, is safe and your rooks are ready, rather than just thinking to yourself, well, I have space. So when black plays the pawn to e5 and allows the trade. For example, e5 and white captures. For example, if the pawn is on f4 and white captures on e5 with the f-pawn, the strategic themes become: number one, counter strike in the center. Black wants to challenge white's space. c5, for example, by opening lines and trading central pawns. Number two, attack weaknesses created by black's pawn breaks. After black plays e5 and later exchanges, black may end up with squares that are slightly tender, typically the dark squares near the king and the center, or weak pawns depending on final pawn layout. And there it is, pawn to e5. D takes e5, knight g4, queen d4, f6, f4. So black's game plan is challenge the center, trade into an open middle game, somewhat open, and penetrate with rooks. Rook b8, pawn to h3, kicking the knight. In between move, pawn captures on e5, white recaptures. Now, that sequence of moves typically reduces pawn blockage in the center and creates open or half-open lines for pieces and rooks. This was black's plan to counter white's space. Let's continue. Knight f2, attacking the rook on h1, rook h2. Now you're probably wondering why not rook f1. If rook f1, the knight will just capture on h3 and it's defended by the bishop on c8. Rook h2, knight e4. Knight takes e4, d takes e4, bishop e3, and bishop to f5, defending the pawn. White castles long. If you castle long, make sure you're not allowing immediate rook penetration. After white castles long, black's rook activity later is exactly what you must guard against. Typical practical check. Ask yourself these questions. Are there any files or ranks that black can invade on immediately? Now we're into the meat of the lesson. This is the key moment for black. Always keep in mind that in chess, tactics occur out of the blue. White's last move was castling long. Now later, after the pawn exchanges took place in the center, black's key strategic ideas come to fruit. Number one, use the open files and improve the rooks. Black's rook activity becomes very important at this point. You see the rooks getting ready to line up, particularly either on the A and B files. Black will infiltrate. In this game, black manages to infiltrate white's second rank. So what move did black play here? The move was bishop g5. Now, what is the threat here? Well, if queen takes d8, then black's in-between move is bishop takes the bishop on e3 check. And the king would have to move over. If bishop captures bishop, on g5, then queen will capture on g5 with check and will pick up the pawn on g3, attacking the rook that is on h2. For instance, bishop takes g5, queen takes g5 is check, king b1, and queen takes on g3, attacking the rook on h2. So what was played here? Before I give you the answer, I'm going to lay down a middle game concept. When rooks and queen get involved, try to force trades. That's right, force trades, but in a way that improves your king's protection and also activates your pieces, which is exactly what white does here. And he becomes very active in the center and on the queen's side. Queen to c4 check. King over to h8. Rook takes d8. Bishop takes e3 check. And now king b1 followed by rook on f takes d8. Now it's two rooks and two bishops versus a rook, a queen, and a light square bishop. Rook h1 and rook to d2, rook to the 7th. Now the threat is rook takes on b2. Pawn to b3. Bishop d4 is guarded by the rook. Pawn to e3. Here, if bishop captures, then white can capture the pawn on e4. Or check, followed by king c1. Rook takes the bishop on g2. Queen captures bishop on d4. And now the position is a queen and a rook versus two rooks and a bishop. Keep this in mind. At the 1800 rated level and above, keep this in mind. At this level or at your playing level with your strength, You often win or lose games based on choosing the correct trade continuation. So improve piece coordination before forcing exchanges. You want to select moves that improve your least active rook or knight, and that can matter more than just winning a pawn, especially if it grants you an invasion file, rank, or square. That is all I have for now. Please don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video.